Let's bring in Elie Honig. He's our CNN senior legal analyst and former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. We also have Joe Walsh. He's a former Republican congressman from Illinois, and Page Pate, a constitutional law expert and a criminal defense attorney. Page, I want to start with you because you are in Georgia, where we've just gotten this report that this Atlanta area DA has sent a target letter to the GOP party chair there, David Schaefer. Explain why alert someone that they are the target of an investigation. What's the point of this letter?
Well, Allison, that's a great question, and I'll tell you specifically in this case, it's because Fani Willis previously told David Schaefer that he was only a witness in this investigation. So if you're going to change the status of somebody who you may subpoena to go in front of the grand jury, it is incumbent upon you as a prosecutor to be fair about it, to let them know, hey, you're not just a witness any longer, you may be indicted. You have become, apparently over the past couple of months, a target of this investigation now. So it's really out of fairness to the potential witness.
So, Elie, of course, that suggests that in their investigation, they found something that justifies that elevation from just a witness to a potential target. What does this letter suggest about the progress of this special grand jury investigation?
Well, Victor, this is a major development in this case and in this investigation. Prosecutors do sometimes notify a person, you've now become a target. And what that means is that prosecutors have compelling evidence linking that person to commission of a crime, and that they believe that that person is what we call a putative defendant, meaning at this point, a likely defendant. And Page is absolutely right. One of the reasons that you do notify somebody they've become a target is out of a sense of fair play, to let that person get represented if they need to, so they don't incriminate themselves, and so they have some sense of what might be coming. But another reason you do that sometimes strategically is you're trying to flip somebody. You want to send someone a message that, hey, an indictment could be coming your way, and it may be in your interest to come in and talk to us. So this is a really important and I think telling step forward in this investigation.
So, Joe, there's that development, okay, in Georgia. And then there's also developments today in the January 6th investigation, one of them being that the Inspector General for the Department of Homeland Security says that the Secret Service deleted some texts around January 6th and January 5th, so around the Capitol riot. And the Secret Service seems to have explained it by saying, well, we were going through a device upgrade. But, I mean, as I pointed out, I also have gotten a new cell phone since then, but all my text messages are still there. So, obviously, there's some questions that need to be answered here.
Secret Service agents are supposed to physically protect a president. They aren't supposed to politically protect a president. And this erased emails from the day before and January 6th just adds to this smell that there was a weird political loyalty that these Secret Service agents might have had for Donald Trump. And you add that to the Secret Service agents who contradicted Cassidy Hutchinson's story about what Trump did in the limo, but they refused to go under oath to give that testimony. This is adding to the Secret Service really needs to be looked into, and their allegiances and loyalty here really need to be questioned.
Elie, staying with the January 6th committee, we just heard from Caitlin Polans revisiting the idea of trying to get testimony from the former president, former vice president, and written responses. That's an option here. Are there pitfalls specifically of trying to get those answers on paper instead of in person?
Yeah, Victor, you're not going to get much out of a person like Mike Pence in written responses. I mean, in all likelihood, all the committee would get back from that is a bunch of lawyer non-committal responses. And think back to the Mueller investigation when that team decided not to subpoena Donald Trump, but instead to send him a bunch of written questions, which then came back weeks or months later with just a bunch of lawyerly doesn't recall, may or may not. So I think that's fairly useless. I think that if the committee is serious about getting information from Mike Pence, they ought to consider subpoenaing him, or if not, trying to negotiate some sort of live testimony, because otherwise it's just not going to advance the cause of truth much.
But, I mean, in fairness, Paige, don't they have to ask Vice President Pence and former President Trump about these questions that concern, I mean, they're central figures here. Don't they have to ask them, even if they get useless answers?
Well, I don't think they have to, but I certainly think it would be a good idea what's the worst that can happen? They can refuse to answer these questions. They could not get information, as Ellie suggested, just general lawyer speak, that type of stuff. But I think asking the question, giving them that opportunity, pressing them to come forward and to present the other side, if there is another side. I mean, we've apparently seen President Trump sending messages to people saying, look, it should be fair, you know, there should be equal time. Well, come on in. You know, I think that makes sense, to let the American people hear whatever it is they have to say and compare it to the evidence that we've heard so far.
Congressman, the reporting from New York Magazine, also CNN, is it the only question that former President Trump has to answer about a 2024 run is when to announce? Before the midterms, after the midterms? We know from McConnell and McCarthy that their focus is going to be the economy. How does this upset that apple cart?
Well, first off, if it were up to Trump, he would have announced a year ago. They've been holding him back. He will announce before the midterms. Republicans aren't happy about that. I don't think Democrats should get ahead of themselves and think that Trump announcing is going to help them, because voters aren't concerned about that. I actually believe he's going to announce before the midterms, and because he wants to claim credit for any potential victory in November and make it all about him.
Joe, I've been reading your tweets where you say that what you've learned is that a large swath of Americans like a strong man as a leader. They want to be led. I mean, there's just a truism, I think, in that. It's not just Americans. And so do you think that President Trump has been weakened by the January 6th? In other words, when he announces, if it's just a case of when, do you think that it will be met with as much enthusiasm as it would have without the January 6th committee?
I actually do, Allison. Look, I was a Republican my whole life. I left 2 years ago because the party has become authoritarian. I speak to Trump supporters every day. They're not bothered by anything Donald Trump did regarding January 6th. They aren't. The only ones who question whether he should be the nominee, they question it because they worry that all of this stuff might make it more difficult for him to win. But I have no doubt if he comes out and announces, I still don't believe many people will challenge him in the Republican Party, because sadly, I think the party is still his.
All right, Joe Walsh, Ellie Honig, Page Pate, thank you.